Hello guys, in this short video we'll talk about network model resources in ArcSight ESM. Right, so before we start with the actual explanation behind the network model in ArcSight ESM, let me say a huge thank you to each one of you who are commenting, subscribing, posting and sharing my videos. You're literally helping me out growing my channel and reaching more ArcSight professionals out there. In the next weeks, you can expect more ArcSight content, not only related to the Enterprise Security Manager, but as well to some of the new products which have been recently announced and, let's say, released. Yep, you're right. I mean Recon, Intercept, and as well the ArcSight SOAR. Okay, so now let's get back to business. Let's focus our attention on the network model resources in ArcSight ESM. Think about the network model like a representation of the nodes on your network. And not only nodes on your network, but as well certain characteristics of the network itself. Before you can make an informed decision about what to do about certain type of events, it helps you a lot, to know the event source and destination. So from which functional area, from which functional part of your network a particular event is coming, or what is the actual destination. And this is where basically the network model is coming and helping us to understand much better what is the source, what is the destination of the different events. So uh, ArcSight ESM captures this information by modeling the asset on your network and particular attributes of the network itself that are pertinent to evaluating events. The network model represents information for individual assets and as well whole zones. So basically, what is an asset? What is an asset range, zone, network, and a customer? Let's try to explain this quickly. An asset is any network endpoint with an IP address or a MAC address. All assets must have either an IP address or a MAC address, and as well individual IP addresses assigned to various network interfaces used on a node or like a host. The individual nodes or hosts on your network, such as servers, routers, laptops, might have multiple assets. The asset resource describes the actual attributes of the systems on your network. Adding assets and their associated zones and networks is a function of the administrator. Zones Zones they contain a contiguous block of IP addresses to which assets or asset ranges are basically associated. Zones represent functional groups within a network, such as a wireless LAN or the engineering network, the VPN, or the DMZ. Uh, an asset range. Asset ranges are set again of network nodes or assets that use like a contiguous block of IP addresses. So an asset range is useful if you have many assets that are somewhat difficult to track like individually, or if you have like assets like laptops which are entering and leaving the network, um, might be a good idea to create an asset range and to assign a particular asset range to those like machines. A network, a network is collection of one or more zones. An individual asset can belong to one zone, and a zone can only belong to one network. This functionality allows the ArcSight Enterprise Security Manager to recognize multiple assets with the same IP address if your organization, for some reason, has overlapping IPs or duplicate IP addresses. The customer resource represents the owner of a network. In private organizations, customer denotes cost centers, internal groups, or again, subdivisions. The customer designation helps, and it's very handy in occasions, in situations where you want, for example, to separate the event traffic from um, multiple cost centers and business units. After configuring a connector, basically the administrator assigns a customer attribute to it. In this way, the customer attribute helps to differentiate between events that have occurred in different networks but have similar, for example, attacker or target IP addresses. The customer designation helps the ArcSight connector to identify the network to look up when basically looks up for the correct zone for each endpoint in an event. Okay, after clearing up a little bit the theory here, now it's time to focus our attention over the practical aspect of the network model in ArcSight ESM. Okay, so populating the network model, there are three ways. Manually, uh, the second way is using CSV files, and the third way is using a smart connector. What is the difference between the manual, the CSV method, or using the smart connector? Now, manually, this is done via the ArcSight ESM console. It's good basically for ad hoc editing. Uh, in terms of production, not very practical because you cannot really import simultaneously a lot of assets, a lot of zones. The second way, using CSV files is okay. This is done through the console network model wizard. It's good for small networks. It's good as well for loading a couple of zones, a couple of assets. Not very practical for managing lots of assets, lots of zones, and so on. And the third way, probably the best one, is the asset import smart connector, which is production capable, needs one smart connector to be deployed, to be installed as a service in order to import all the necessary zones and assets. Okay, so what do we got here? This is, as you know, guys, the ArcSight ESM console, and now we're gonna start from top to bottom. So this means from the customer. From after that, we're gonna move to the networks, then to the zones, and finally and eventually we're going to import as well some assets. So first we're going to start with the manual way of creating things in ArcSight ESM through the ESM console. Basically here now I'm creating one customer. This customer, I'm gonna call it Acme. Very simple, as you see. I'm just giving a name and then yeah, click on the apply button and then the actual customer appears under customers. Then the next step is to basically create and to add networks to ArcSight Enterprise Security Manager. Um, and literally here I'm right clicking and I'm just going to create a new group. Under this new group I'm going to put my two networks. Okay, yeah, just a simple name. And yeah, let's go ahead and let's create our networks. One will be called Acme network, and the other one I'm going to call it like Acme default. All right. Um, I'm going to associate as well the customer. So basically, this means that both of those networks, the Acme network and the Acme default, are going to be associated with the Acme customer. Now, while I'm creating here the two networks, uh, very often customers, especially in the trainings when we're doing them, are saying to me, like Tsvetelin, okay, it's clear. Once we have deployed, once we have installed the ArcSight Enterprise Security Manager, then let's say, what is the next step? Well, the next step, probably in my opinion, is of course to design to just create like a strategy as well in your head to know very well all the different types of devices, data sources which are deployed across your network, across your environment. As well, make a plan of creating smart connectors in order to gather all the necessary data and so on. And then as probably a third step, okay, you need to do the steps that I'm doing like right now. You need to create your own network assets, zones, as well a customer as per best practice. Customer is ideal, is very good, especially for um, when you're managing like more than one cost center. For example, if you have like two locations or two different subdivisions, or like you have as well overlapping IP addresses, and you want to differentiate from which network a particular event is coming in, and it's very tough and it's very hard because you have overlapping IP addresses. Probably a good idea might be to associate a different customer resource with your smart connectors. So this is ideally, my opinion. You would install the ArcSight Enterprise Security Manager. As a second step, you're going to install your smart connectors. As a third step, you want to create your um, network model in ArcSight ESM. You want to populate it either using CSV files, either building and creating it manually, which, like we've said, is not very practical, or the third way would be to eventually deploy and to install a smart connector. By the way, there is a fourth way as well, developing and creating your own flex connector that can do pretty much the same thing like the smart connector. But yeah, if you want a little bit more information, you can as well consider checking our courses, the Advanced Administrator course, where we're reviewing all those topics and subjects. Okay, after adding manually here the two networks using my ArcSight ESM console, I just wanted very quickly to show you the CSV files that I have here that I'm going to use. Basically, I'm going to import all this information into ArcSight Enterprise Security Manager using the network model wizard. So yeah, this file right here. One second. Uh, yeah, we gotta go under tools and then the introduction. You can read as well the description, what is written. It's going to give you some basic information about what you're about to do. You can clearly, like I said, import zones, assets, and asset ranges from this wizard, from using basically this tool, this capability, this functionality of ArcSight ESM. I'm simply going to browse, I'm simply going to look for my zones, and then I'm going to import them. So we browse, we select them, we click on OK, and then we're good to go. Right, next. Okay, this is how they're going to appear. And then do you want to import some assets, some asset ranges? You can skip, by the way, those two, let's say, wizards, those two steps by simply clicking on next. And now, yeah, the procedure, the process of basically importing the CSV file has initiated, has started. It literally takes 20-30 seconds, and as you can see, we're done. Data imported, and yeah, okay. Now let's verify. Let's take a look what we've did. Site zones. You can see all the zones that we have imported using the CSV file. Okay. Now let's try to do actually, yeah, 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Uh, let me select all of them. Yeah, let's do like this. Right click. Okay. Move to another network, and now I'm simply just going to select and simply just going to choose the Acme network that I created earlier. In this way, what I'm doing, I'm basically associating all those zones that I just imported with the actual network that I created earlier manually. Okay, yeah, this is the network. So if I right click and then say graph view, this is how it appears. Basically, I have the customer, Acme, then the actual network that belongs, that is associated with this customer, and then all related zones which are going to be part of this Acme network. All right, that's great. Now let's go ahead and let's separate a little bit um, our zones, because those are different zones in different cities. They are not, let's say, zones in a single city. Uh, in order to do this, what we're going to do, we can create manually, for example, locations on the right side of our screen. I don't know if you see this step, but yeah, this is what we can do. Or as well, we can import directly. I have already created the ArcSight resource bundle file, like a package, which I'm going to import. So those locations, I'm going to associate them basically with the different zones, because like I said, they are not, for example, all of them located in the New York or in San Francisco. They're located in different cities. So here, let's look for the package. Yeah. Um, okay, here are the different groups. In other words, what will happen is right now, yeah, several different groups will be added, will be created under here, under uh, zones. Yeah, do you see them? Dallas, New York, San Jose, and yeah, the headquarters. Okay. Now, what I'm just going to do, simply because there is no automated way of doing this, I'm going just to select the actual zones, and I'm going to associate them with the actual group where they basically belong. So Dallas, the headquarters, San Jose, and New York. I simply control left click, um, and then yeah, I'm simply dragging and dropping them. It's straightforward. There is nothing hard. Uh, yeah, this is how now I have associated the actual zones with the cities basically, to which they belong. Okay. Mm, right. So after doing this, I'm going to now do the same for the Acme default. No changes here. Okay, what I'm doing, I'm basically looking for a CSV file to import some zones as well, and to associate them with my Acme default. I'm going to do a fast forward because this will take some time. Okay, and let's go ahead now and let's select individually, one by one, all the different zones, and let's associate with each one of those their appropriate locations, like literally physical locations. Again, right click, we browse. All we have to do is just to know which zone belongs to which particular location, and then it's pretty simple. I'm going to do another fast forward here because for each one of them, yeah, it's going to take some time, as you can clearly understand, and I don't want to waste your time. Okay, so finally, here we are now at slow motion, the moment of truth. Let's take a look, right click, graph view, and that's it. We can see now not only the actual San Jose group, but as well the actual physical location, which is called San Jose, associated with each one of the different zones that we have imported here in our ArcSight ESM. The same thing I'm going to do as well now for my Acme default. Okay, since I don't want to waste your time, I have just fast forwarded and I already did that. Okay, so this is just a look from the zones. This is how they appear. Both of them, the Acme and the Acme default. Sorry, the networks and all the zones which are associated with them. Um, and yeah. After seeing the first two methods, the manual and the utilization of CSV files, we'll see as well the third method using a connector. Uh, right now, we're going to deploy one smart connector which will basically import some assets in our ArcSight ESM. All we need is, of course, the software. All we need is a smart connector executable file in order to do this. Yeah, I'm just checking something here and yeah, okay. Um, the installation of the smart connector step by step. Now we're going to take a look. This is the initial wizard, as you all know. So let's do next. Where would you like to install? Let's pick a location. Usually I'm putting it under C, ArcSight, and then I'm just creating another folder, which we can call, for example, I don't know, asset import or whatever we want. Don't create any icons and just go ahead and continue with the installation. Okay, unique generator ID. I'm just putting a random number and then clicking on next. Right, next. And then what type of connector do you want to install? We want to install an asset import file type of a connector. Import folder. Now it's important, guys, what I can share with you first to have a folder defined and let's say created, let's say for instance under your C ArcSight directory, and then just like I'm doing, I'm creating it literally like right now. I'm just gonna call it assets. Okay, and now you know what do you have to do. You have to specify your destination, so where basically information will be forwarded. You have to provide the host name of your ArcSight ESM, the credentials, administrative credentials, or connector type of installer credentials. Give a name. I'm just going to call it asset import or something like that, and then as well specify the location. Um, click on next. Import the certificates from destination. Okay. I think I'm going to do another fast forward because usually here it's taking like a minute. Okay, and now here we are, install as a service. All we need to do is just to give a meaningful name to our service. So this is basically how the service is going to appear whenever we open up the services.msc. And let's just hit the next button, next one more time, and then just exit in order to quit the installer. Done, and we're good to go. All right, so now there is our basically again CSV file, which we have defined. The CSV file is called assets, local assets. Let me open it for you. Edit with Notepad. Yeah. So here you can see the address, the actual assets, the host name, and so on. Okay. Mm. Now this file, the CSV file, I'm just going to put it under ArcSight and then the newly created import folder. If you remember that we have called assets during the installation of the smart connector. So after putting it there, all we need to do is just to start the service manually. So all we need to go is just to go under services.msc and look for the ArcSight service. Right click, start, and then probably you'll notice almost immediately that this file, the CSV one, I mean, is going to be transformed. So let me just go for you under assets, under site assets, still nothing, okay, because the connector is starting. But yeah, now if we go under here, do you see, yeah, how the CSV file has been changed to, you can check out the extension now, it's saying done CSV. Yeah, this means that the file has been read by the connector and basically the information contained into this CSV was delivered successfully under ArcSight ESM. So let's just go ahead under Acme assets and here we are, boom. We have our assets basically available, basically imported successfully into our ArcSight Enterprise Security Manager. If we right click and say edit, you see it's not really saying the appropriate zone. So this is a wrong zone that is specified. We want somehow to map right now the assets to correspond to our zones that we have imported earlier, the Dallas, the San Jose, the San Francisco headquarters, and so on, right? So how do we do this? We gotta click on assets. So right click auto zone. This is the option that you need, guys. Auto zone, and then you just choose the network with which you want to associate basically your assets. And do you see now? This is what we've got. We've got all assets associated with the appropriate zones that we have imported earlier using a CSV file. Okay, so if we want a bigger picture, let's right click once again. Yeah, this is how the Acme network shows appears. The Acme default with the corresponding with the associated zones, right? And yeah, so here are the assets. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.